have passed since the beginning of this barbaric war. We warned from the very beginning, supporting terrorists in Syria will backfire. The US and Saudi Arabia created the so-called Mujahideen in Afghanistan in the 80s. The result was 9/11 and Al-Qaeda. The same duo created the so-called freedom fighters for Syria, and the result is the so-called ISIS and many other Al-Qaeda affiliates. The result is all these terrorist murderous attacks in France, Lebanon, Egypt, Mali, and other countries. Terrorism has no boundaries, and Syria is the first line of defense against terrorism today. It's unfortunate that this administration continues to support these groups. Today they are talking about refugees as a justification for further involvement. They are talking about refugees about justification for further involvement in the war against Syria. They are using the suffering of our brothers and sisters to justify what they call safe zones and further military attacks against Syria. I want to remind them all that the outright majority of displaced Syrians resorted to government-controlled areas. They are protected by their government and they are protected by their army. If you really want a solution to this humanitarian issue, stop supporting terrorism and bring peace to Syria.
Our allies are waging wars for resources, wars for exploited labor, and wars of oppression and racism here and all around the world. Since 1945, the U.S. and its NATO allies have attempted to overthrow 50 foreign governments, killing millions in the process. This, along with free trade agreements and the World Financial Institution, consolidated U.S. global capitalism's power all over the world. But the system is in crisis, and the wars are an example of it. The U.S. and its allies rely on a policy of supporting terrorism. That is the root of the Paris attacks. That is the root of many terrorist attacks that have hit our shores over the last decade or so, and that is the root of the wars all over the world. The U.S. has supported terrorism of the jihadist variety since 1979 when they created the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. They've utilized these same bandits in Iraq, in Yugoslavia, in Afghanistan again, in Libya, and now Syria. These, as Malcolm X said after JFK's assassination, are chickens coming home to roost. And we must build a mass movement to bring down the overseers of the farm that created them. And we must also demand a respect for self-determination for the Syrian people and for all peoples of the world, including nations inside this country, black people, indigenous people. As Malcolm X said again when he visited Algeria and nations at war, that the U.S. and its allies are committing genocide, and we must demand an end to it.
By the powers that be to ramp up the surveillance, ramp up destroying all of our civil liberties, and fight back to maintain our own autonomy, our own integrity, and get rid of the system that is not serving us. Capitalism has to go. Patriarchy has to go. Racism has to go. Gender orthodoxy has to go. We have to be able, as we heard earlier, to love each other and to be present with each other as human beings. And we can do that, and in fact it is happening. There are many, many groups now in the Boston area that are meeting. If you can get on Facebook or go to Meetup, or there's lots of ways to go online and find out what's going on. But I urge you to bring a friend, convert your family. We don't have time to lose. So I look forward to seeing you in your streets. Thank you very much.
Let me tell you one thing. Profit before people is the dorsal spine of capitalism.
That's right.
profit before people in the dorsal spine of capitalism, and they will go wherever they need to go to get those resources. In the meantime, here in this country, people are suffering. We have thousands of homeless people in the street. They're proposing cuts in all kinds of social services. So, you cannot separate austerity measures from capitalism neither. And there is austerity measures here where at the same time they're trying to steal the resources of our brothers and sisters in the Middle East.
We need money!
We say no to imperialism. We say no to neocolonialism. We say yes to self-determination. Long live the working class of the world.
Need for peace and human rights?
Thank you. I'm happy that you're all here. Joining us, the Committee for Peace and Human Rights has a protest here every Saturday. We've been here about 18 years or so, and it's always nice when we're joined by the IAC or other groups to swell our ranks a bit. I think the U.S. feels like its strong suit is war. So they just think wherever there's a problem, let's just have a little war. And I've heard people say that the people in all of our embassies around the world are given the instructions that one of their main jobs is to be sure to facilitate arms sales. We want the most arms all over the world. Great approach. Syria has been devastated by this war, which came about in large part because of our invasion of Iraq and all of the destabilization that came from that.
Thank you very much. Just to sort of give everybody my bona fides, I am a veteran. My name is Munanam. I'm a member of the Wampanoag tribe of Gay-Hedequina. And I would like to bring this down to a different level. It's the level of humanity. And it's nothing more than the level of humanity. None of this would be going on if people respected each other and took the time to learn about each other. Since 1970, we've been in Plymouth every day on Thanksgiving. U.S. Thanksgiving, we call it Thanksgiving. 46 times. And our whole thing is, we want to tell the truth. And that's the only thing that is going to save humanity. Going to war. Thank God I never saw combat, even though I was in the Navy for about 20 years. I never saw combat, but I've talked to people who have. And it is unfortunate that the human being will take up arms against another human being for any reason. But we also have to deal with the fact that these are sovereign nations. Saudi Arabia is sovereign. Syria is sovereign. Afghanistan is sovereign. Pakistan, so forth and so on and so forth. And this government decides that they are going to come in there and tell them how to run their lives. Well, I would like to say one thing to those who disagree with me, is every one of the people standing, unless you are an indigenous person of this country, is a refugee or an immigrant. End of story.
Right on.
And the idea, see, maybe we should have closed our borders back in 1620. Because I'd be a lot better off if we had. But on the other hand is, we're dealing with human beings. The U.S. government, they are the biggest pack of liars that I have ever met. We have made 365 treaties with the United States government as Native people. And you know something? They've only kept one, and that was to take our land. That's right. And they have done that.